Wilbur, I got a question for you. When you get an email, now this is mild compared to the occasional 0.001% of the ones that I would classify as negative. But here comes the naysayer. You ready?
Yes.
How far afield do you have to go? This is from Robert. How far afield do you have to go to find these paranoid schizophrenics? Surely this man is out of his mind and should have been placed in an institution a long time ago. This man and sanity have nothing in common. Rather than promoting these sick individuals, why not contact Dr. somebody in the skeptics, I can make this out, and the Skeptic Society and have reasonable scientists present valid scientific explanations for what you people think of as ETs. Fun movie, but I must point out to you that you have really crossed the line considering those, such as this person you have on tonight, as having real experiences. Reality is not in this man's world. Get some real scientists on, or are you afraid of what they would say in truth? Now, how do you respond to that?
I respond to that person. Obviously, that person has psychological issues. For the simple reason, now, I'm not going to sit here and make a claim that I cannot substantiate without physical samples and physical evidence, which I have done thus far. And you have people like that who are the naysayers, and they're hell-bent on stopping the flow of information, and they believe that they've got the answer to things, and it's obvious this person does not know what he's talking about. And it's obvious that, if I am so psychologically unstable and delusional, then the material coming off my camera must be the result of my psychological instability, and that my mental state is actually affecting the images that I generate. So we have a situation here where, okay, I'm mentally manipulating photographs, if that's what they want me to believe.
Hell of a case of psychokinesis, man.
Exactly. I get a lot of that. I got people who are trying to put I try not to associate anything religious to an anomalous event other than it is an anomalous event outside of what we would consider normal. But there are people who want to define it as demonic or angelic, which you cannot possibly define it as such. And, there are people who will sit there and look at the physical samples and claim that it is nothing other than an inconsistency within the camera. But yet, those are the very same people that could not program a VCR 20 years ago. And VCRs went out of business. Think about that. They couldn't program a VCR. But they're going to tell me what I've got photographs of and tell me what I'm capable of generating in terms of my mental and emotional state. I don't take that very kindly at all, and I find that, in fact, insulting.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say it just that way. Robert, may you be probed.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Yeah, with the big probe, okay? Let me ask you something, Wilbur. Do you talk with other contactees? I presume you do.
There are other people, and one of those persons I mentioned was Melvin Harris, who had an encounter as a child, and here is the guy who is taking photographs. And I've got a photograph that he took and a photograph that I took that are a 100% match, but his photograph's in Mount Vernon, New York. My photograph is in Baltimore, Maryland. And the same thing with Wayne Miller in Idaho. He's taking the same photographs that I'm taking in Washington, D.C., and in Shreveport and in Area 51. He's getting the same photographs in Idaho. So how do you dispute that when we have physical samples coming from different locations, coming from different photographers, all consistent with what I'm getting photographs of here in Washington, D.C.?
Mm-hmm. Are the lights that you see, these beams that come down, are they generally white or are they occasionally green?
I'm getting green. I'm getting pure white light. I'm getting amber, a yellowish amber, almost like the color of the sun during sunset. I'm getting pink, which is really abstract. I'm getting red, and I'm getting blue.
Do the colors seem to have a different effect, or have you been able to observe this?
I'm observing it, but what was interesting is the encounter that I had at the U.S. Capitol building July 16th in 2002, which showed this formation of luminous objects. The rear objects were modulating these colors, and it was interesting that in this particular sample that I took from Lower Senate Park, and it showed this object in a 3.5-minute exposure. In the 3.5 minutes that it was being photographed, it showed this object start to vibrate, and as it started to vibrate, you could see clearly what looks like this arc or a hole open up in the sky. And when it started vibrating, and it discharged this amount of energy, which gave it this like a flash of light, which normally one would see when they would see anomalous objects suddenly appear. You would see a flash of light, or you'd see a flashlight as the object disappears. It is clearly showing what these objects are capable of, especially in the terms of a level of energy that they utilize to do what they do in order to get to our area in space. And I would refer to that individual who questioned the integrity of the samples to defer to Dr. Mitchell, who I lectured with in New Jersey, and listen to what he is saying with what he's experienced in space. Also to defer to Dr. Mitchell, not Dr. Mitchell, but Buzz Aldrin, Dr. Aldrin, who experienced the same anomalous object in space during Apollo 11, and who also experienced anomalous objects on the surface of the moon that are consistent with the objects that I'm photographing here in Washington, D.C.
Going back to your contact with the aliens themselves, did their appearance as aliens, not craft or orb-like phenomena, did that stop after the one encounter when you were a child?
It didn't stop. I didn't have the technology that I have now, or back in 2002 when I started imaging these anomalous objects with film cameras that I utilized. But it started to become almost routine for me to experience these really abstract events, and that with the amount of abstract events that I would experience, that I've grown accustomed to them, and it becomes almost a everyday routine to me. So it doesn't affect me the same way that it would affect another person who would have this experience for the first time.
Well, I know there are some intuitive audience members out there that are going to say, "Oh, he's going to tell that story again." But I'll be brief. On a trip from Houston to Dallas, after being in England during the winter months, my wife and I made it from Houston to Dallas in 2 hours and 40 minutes along the highway, which was Highway 45 going north. Just suddenly a green light. It was as though I had just put on night vision goggles, and I didn't, and it flooded the car, and I looked at I even remember the song that was playing. It was a George Harrison song. Looked down the console, looked at the radio, looked out the driver's window across the highway. I could see the trees on the other side of the highway. They looked like skeleton trees. You could see their trunks and branches, but no foliage. Looked back to the front, and then it stopped. Don't remember anything about the trip till we got to Dallas. Didn't speak of it. And not that night, but the next night, I had this dream that later on, several years later, I was watching this thing called Sightings. I'd promoted it many times for other television stations when I was doing that regularly, but I'd never actually watched it. So I watched it, and these three guys are in a boat, and a little mothership shows up and beams them on board. And the thing that really got me was that what they did, the next morning, they just awoke in the boat, didn't say a thing, packed up their gear and left, but they wrote down what had happened to them, mailed them to each other, along with drawings of what they remember. And when I saw this stuff, it was exactly what I dreamed. So, and this was that green light thing. So I'm presuming this was it never happened before and it hadn't happened since. But what I'm leading up to is, can we assume that anyone who has had an experience like this has been tagged, chipped, or otherwise implanted? Do you find that when you speak with these people that just kind of goes along with it?
I believe that is indeed the case. And, it's interesting that when I started having these encounters as a child, and they're continually happening to this day, and with the type of technology I have, and I'm photographing these events now that I have this technology to do so, but it's like a situation where, when they do come and they ascend onto you, that once you're tagged, you're always tagged. It's like a game you never get out of. You're never out of the game, and they're constantly monitoring you. I'm not sure for what purpose, and I know it's interesting that in monitoring my activities, I'm monitoring their activities because they're telling me to take pictures of themselves while I'm being instructed to do certain things. And that when I do so, it's the feeling that I get that's more unnerving than anything because I feel watched. And, I'll go places like in Area 51 and in Sedona, which, by the way, Sedona and Area 51 are connected through an underground tunnel. So we have connections here where we're I was able to image objects in Area 51 and objects in Sedona that were a match. And the object that comes out of what I call a wormhole, it can't come from anything else other than some kind of portal that was in space while it materialized in the video frame. It had to come from somewhere. And, people question, though, well, okay, I see the object appear, but where's the wormhole? Well, we don't see the wormhole. What we see is an object suddenly materializing into the airspace itself. So you have to deal with the subtle nuances of the wordage here. And essentially, I'm basically making statements based on what Dr. Mitchell and what Dr. Aldrin spoke of, especially in some of the anomalous events that took place on the moon, that are consistent with the anomalous events that take place on Earth.
I wonder how far it is from Area 51 to Sedona.
It's about 600 miles.
600 miles.
So they have a tunnel that goes from Sedona, Arizona to Area 51. And it's interesting that the area where I went into Sedona, which is known as the Bradshaw Ranch, had the same kind of ground sensors that were utilized in Area 51, maintaining that area in terms of its overall surveillance.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Now, how do you, I just have to ask, how do you know of the existence of this tunnel?
Well, we have a few people that were along with us on the expedition I did with the BBC in Sedona. One of them was a reverend that worked with us on Big Redneck Vacation, Reverend Short. And Reverend Short's been living there. He's an older guy, in his 70s, maybe 80s. He's also a U.S. Navy veteran. And he says that there was indeed a tunnel that was drilled from Area 51, or essentially started from Sedona to Area 51, and that the occupants of the Bradshaw Ranch, which were the Bradshaw family, were paid by the U.S. government to move out. And while they were in negotiation for the land itself, the Bradshaw family experienced rumbling on the ground, and rumbling on the ground generally is indicative of tunneling which is taking place beneath them, and that's what they experienced. So we have these sensors, and we have now this connection from Sedona to Area 51, and we have physical samples, photographic that is, of objects in Area 51 and the same objects photographed in Sedona. So you make those connections, and we base most of our assumptions on the physical data that we're able to accumulate on location.
Yeah, it's amazing, going back to your comment about these people can't program a VCR, but they know everything about space.
You got a picture of. You have to deal with that, because essentially what I understand is most people speak from fear, and what we're looking at are people who are speaking out of fear. And fear is a disease.
Yes, it is, and it's contagious.
It's very much so, and it affects our overall disposition in life. And if we live in fear, we're doomed.
Do you mind if we take a call?
We can take a call.
Let's take one from Carl, east of the Rockies. He's down there in Texas somewhere. Carl, come on board the bridge of the mothership and talk to us.
Thanks a lot. This is a very interesting topic. A few years ago, I remember I was listening to one of the Art Bell reruns, and I think he was mentioning that he was laying on somebody's roof looking up into the sky with an image intensifier, and he saw all kinds of things. I believe that was Art Bell, and that got me interested. I've actually accumulated an interesting collection of night vision, which, starts with just regular image intensifiers, and now I'm kind of collecting thermal cameras, the cryogenically cooled kind. And I've built up this system that's outside. It's soon to be on top of a 42-foot pneumatic mast that I have, and that will allow me to remote control it and observe from in the house. And I guess what I'm wondering is, you were discussing cameras with a very high ISO. What kind of frame weight do you think it would take to actually see something?
What I'm doing, and when you have to consider, when you start shooting video at night, and video cameras are essentially firing video at 30th of a second or 24th of a second, which is motion picture sync rate. And with that shutter speed and that film speed, it would require a camera that would have an ISO evaluation of 50,000 or 100,000 ISO to be able to shoot video with sustainable video quality. And one of the things I had to deal with that was an issue in shooting higher ISO video was the noise that was generated from the higher ISO, and to compensate for that, I utilized a technology which is part of Avid Media Composer called Boris Effects, BCC 8.2 noise reduction technology, and it helped me smooth out the distortion generated from the higher ISOs. But, again, just based on the camera technology and the type of technology that's on the market, for you to take video at night, you would utilize a camera that has, first of all, light gathering capabilities, or a lens that has at least a 1.4 or greater aperture opening, or 2.8 would actually do the job. But the faster lenses and the more light that's able to be absorbed by the lens itself would generate a better quality video at the higher ISOs. Other than that, I would not be able to tell you how to generate video with the current technology that's commercially on the market for the consumer.
My best thermal camera, it's a cryogenically cooled camera, and it will image at 480 frames a second. But I have a very large telephoto lens, a germanium lens in front of that, with about a 5-inch diameter lens, and I forget what the aperture is, but it's very sensitive. And I see all kinds of things up there. A lot of them I can't tell what they are, but I've seen bats and all kinds of strange things. And I know eventually I'm going to capture something. I'm just right now I'm trying to figure out how to build a system where it'll have one of my thermal cameras with a wide-angle lens that will look at the overall sky, and when it sees something, it'll direct the telephoto camera lens to that area and train on whatever it is that the other camera saw. That way it'll be kind of an automatic system, and it will just record the video onto the computer, at night, and then I can look at it during the day and see what it captured, and that's what I'm hoping to accomplish anyway.
Well, one of the issues I was having, and there aren't very many cameras on the market that can shoot 6 to 8 hours of video consistently, and I had to modify my approach in capturing these events. And one of the approaches that I took was, there's a saying that stuff happens, is another word for stuff that you utilize, but stuff happens every second. So I programmed an interval which was a frame per second for 6 to 8 hours. And for every second, the camera would take a picture at 1/60th or 1/30th or whatever the shutter speed that would be utilized at that time. And it would take each one of those frames and connect all the frames and make what's called an interval video, or an intervalometer type video, or time-lapse photography. And then I take the time-lapse photography and I convert the time-lapse video back into stills and look at it frame by frame. And I found that it's very useful in capturing events, especially when you can't sit there for 8 hours and aim your camera and try to hope that you randomly get something in space, which chances are you will, or chances are you won't. But with things that happen every second with the type of technology that I'm utilizing, I'm able to capture every second what happens for a period of 8 hours. And I take that video, and that's where I'm able to generate the samples that I'm getting on my website.
Fabulous. Thanks for the call, Carl. Wilbur, you feel like taking some more after this break?
I can take more calls. I have no problems.
Outstanding. We'll be back. This is Coast to Coast AM. Why don't we take a first-time caller? That would be Natalie in New Orleans. How are you, Natalie?
Hello.
Hey. How you doing?
I was listening to you. I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right. Go ahead.
I was listening to you last night. That was amazing, by the way, too. But I was listening to you. I was looking up at the stars. But tonight you were talking about the emerald green light, which is exactly what I was talking about 2 days ago. This happened to me a long time ago. My friend and I were taking a ride to my grandmother's old house. We were driving through the middle of nowhere, like a country highway, and it was pitch black, just trees on either side, the left and right side, forest, just like nothing but tall trees. And the sky was really full of stars. We were just talking about ghosts and things like we always do. And a really, 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 really bright emerald light went through the entire car. It went through me, just like whoosh, just like went through me, through the entire car. We were in this old vintage kind of Oldsmobile, like huge boat of a car.
Yeah, an old 442 or something.
It went through the entire car, but it went through me. I was in the passenger seat, which is bizarre because I usually drive. And my friend's eyes got huge. She looked over at me like, "Oh my God!" And I'm used to things like this happening because things happened all the time throughout my whole life since I was a child. Like, I'm not really 100% surprised by it, but at the same time, it's still exciting, and it still gives me a miniature heart attack when it happens, and I like it. But after the emerald green light went through the car and through me, all of a sudden, these white wings, like white feather wings, went swish, swish, swish against the glass and went like through the glass and then disappeared. I think that there's two things that I think. I think that it could have been a white owl that was affected by the energy of the light, which was probably a visitor coming in really fast and going out really fast, because that's what they do. They leave and come in kind of like when you turn a TV on and off. It's like a transfer. They can transfer really fast.
Interesting.
But it also could have been an orb also, and the white angel wings, or the white wings could have been an angel visitor also. It's two things, alien or angel, or both at the same time, or the white owl and the alien
Gotcha.
energy.
I photographed an object that matches 100% what you're describing. I was doing a shoot for some fashion models, and we went to an abandoned church, and there were these two white balls in the sky. One of the white balls came through the walls of the church and started morphing into a larger ball with wings, and it flew out of the frame looking totally different than what it first entered into the photographic frame during the beginning of the event. So what you're describing, I think I've got a sample of on my website. If you go to my website on ufodc.com and you scroll all the way down, you'll see some fashion models. One of them just happens to look like Rihanna. Take a look at that chapter, because what you're describing is exactly matched to what happened during the event that I photographed with these models.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Check it out.
There's been a discussion. Are they fallen angels? Hang in there for a minute, Natalie. I mean, I suppose a case can be made for it. I'm looking at your site right now. This is some pretty crazy stuff, man. I mean, they're
yeah, it's like if you look at it in the earlier days, what I'm photographing, a person of a simpler intelligence would describe that as an angel or something angelic. But the realities are, whatever this anomalous object was, one of its attributes were these enormous white wings that just manifest into the photograph. And you could see from the samples that was indeed the case. It just happened to morph and sprout these wings as the photographs were going down in sequence.
You know, somebody sent an email a minute ago that says, what I saw was what appeared to be a large cylinder. I can only describe it as to what might be the size of a large log. It was bright golden colored but gave off no outward light. And I'm looking at one of your photographs here, actually a pair of them, and this is amazing. This looks like a white cylinder with a green energy trail, a green energy contrail.
Examples of that taken a week apart, and it shows the same object at the same time 1 week apart.
Oh, these are a week apart. Yeah, you write here, what are the odds of imaging the same object in the same airspace as an event of 7/29/2013? This is just the other day. In the same trajectory and direction.
Everything
Both have a green.
Camera position the same. Everything is relative, and I'm getting the same pictures.
Wow, this is amazing. And 7 days earlier, yeah.
Exactly, in the same time frame. So how logical is that you would capture something like that if there wasn't indeed the possibility of an extraterrestrial base in the immediate vicinity of where I'm taking these photographs?
I really do. I think you're absolutely correct, Wilbur. I think it is. I think it is fear. Nobody really wants to be shaken out of their. Nobody wants to be shaken out of their comfort zone.
I'm insane for talking this, though, and I'm showing physical samples like that, which are clearly not fictitiously generated. then who's insane here? The person that's calling me crazy, or the person that is, who is taking this photograph and making some substantial case of physical facts? Am I crazy?
Well, I'll meet you at the Nut House if you are, okay?
Well, bring me some Prozac.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just sit there and pop Prozac all night.
We'll just have Prozac. We'll have a Prozac party.
So, I don't know.
Not like a party I want to go to, but yes,
Gosh.
indeed.
Yeah, the 80s are gone.
Deal with. It's a fear factor, and these people are afraid. So what they do to discourage things like what I'm saying is try to project me as psychologically or intelligently or emotionally unstable, which obviously is not the case.
Well, yeah. Hey, everybody, go to don't blow his server up, but go to UFODC.com and scroll down. Don't the homepage.
The page goes on forever, but I've got 15 chapters of extraordinary data, which is either film or digital. At first they were saying, oh, there's something wrong with my film camera. Then they're saying, oh, there's something wrong with my digital camera. Now they're saying, oh, there's something wrong with my NASA-grade camera. Where is the problem?
Well, I think it's in the eye of the beholder, and more to the point, I think it's in the mind of the beholder.
Absolutely. And you can't make the water drink when you lead it to the well. And some people, no matter what you say, no matter what you show, they're not going to believe it. They're going to believe that things do not exist.
Look,
regardless of the facts.
Your homepage here, now, when you go to UFODC.com, it's a little bit deceiving because you think that the homepage that appears is all there is. No, that's just the beginning. Start scrolling down. It goes on endlessly. What do you make of it?
It's a very long book, and it is designed to spook you, and it will essentially spook you because the physical data that's there is factual.
Well, it's doing it right now. Now, what do you make of this dotted line? This is reminiscent of what I saw. What you photographed here appeared to be the same color as the stars. That's what I saw, but I didn't see them in a line like this. These were like, it was almost like, I like to describe it as disturbing a spider nest, where a whole bunch of baby spiders have just hatched out, and they're all kind of headed off in the same direction, but it's an irregular pattern. It's a very irregular formation, but this is an organized, rigid formation.
Absolutely.
That you've captured.
And, how do I sit there and take these photographs and then present the photographs without being considered a nutcase? And, here we're dealing specifically with forensic information, which this camera generates. It cannot be fictitiously generated because it has metadata associated to it. Metadata will clearly give you an indication if that image has been altered, and none of the metadata has been altered at all. So we're dealing with facts here, and if you show these facts to some people who believe that the Earth is square, then they're going to believe that the Earth is square.
The Pocatello, Idaho, 7/02/2013. Like I say, this is just the other day by the basketball goal.
It's the same stuff that was imaged in Area 51. It's the same stuff. It's happening everywhere. And if a person's got a somewhat decent camera, they can go out and take photographs. That obviously this guy was someone who just happened to buy the camera less than 2 or 3 months ago, and just happens to be interested in taking photographs, which he claimed that he was seeing UFOs, and I showed him how to do it. And here he's showing me the samples of what he's getting, and they're a match to what I got in Area 51.
And these cylinders, and there's a green one there from 6/20 of this year. This is absolutely amazing. It really is. And there's a dark spot that's occurred. Of course, who knows if north is south or south is north, but as we're looking at it, the top part of the sun is as viewed from Earth. It's got this big black spot on it. And going back to that photograph, that it's a NASA photograph. It looked like a big, somewhat cylindrical barge, huge thing that was very close to the sun.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if it's sucking energy out of it.
Well, the samples that NASA has been able to post, what people have extracted before NASA pulled it down, showed an anomalous object by the sun sucking energy from it. Now, what kind of object would have that much pull that would draw energy from a burning star?
Well, more than that, who built that thing? It has to be positively enormous. Talk about a mothership.
To say the least, probably larger than a planet itself. So with that in mind, it has to be some kind of intelligently controlled object that was not from Kansas.
Well, now you know there's no intelligent design in the universe.
Well, there is no intelligent design. There's no aliens. There's no such thing as little green men.
Right. They're not green.
No, not green. They're gray, actually. But, that's what they want you to believe. And they try to put this comedic twist associated to it to make a joke factor out of it. But the reality is the joke is on them.
I wonder who will be. Never mind. I'm not even going to go there. It trivializes what we're doing here. Oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. I wonder who's going to be the first to propose an alien dating service.
Amazon or maybe, whoever these dating services are. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that's not in the game plan right now. And, with the way things are, and there are aliens here that look just like us. You can go to New York City and you see people, obviously, that do not look like they're from Earth, but yet they're walking among us.
Yep. Well, that's true. And even though that was sort of guised as a joke, it's like, would you date this alien? Oh, some people say, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Is that a guy or a girl? That's a girl. Oh, positively I'd go out with her.
Most guys don't care anymore, but I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
I prefer a woman, but most guys won't go there.
All right. Let's go to John in Parkland, Washington, west of the Rockies, just way west. John, are you there?
Yes, I am.
How are you?
The last couple of nights, Western Washington has been host to numerous thunder and lightning storms, and I was sitting on my front porch watching this great display of lightning all the way from Mount Rainier towards and raced all the way across to Olympia. So it was phenomenal, and there wasn't much rain, so it was a more overcast lightning thing. And I'm watching this great display of lightning, and all of a sudden there's this plasma blast. We've all seen them in lightning storms, and you say, oh, I'm glad I wasn't on the end of that one,
Yep.
But this one obviously went from the ground to the air, and it hit something up there, and it looked like it was the shape of a man's wedding ring, and it hit it, whatever it was, and it lit up cherry red hot, and then after the lightning dissipated, it still glowed for about a second and a half as it cooled down. I think it hit a UFO, and the next one the next lightning flash, which was pretty quick right after it, it wasn't there anymore, and so I think the UFO got hit. And if they monitor your radio telecast here, I got a word of advice. Don't get right in the middle of a lightning storm on planet Earth. It's a lot of electricity, and you ought to get out of Dodge when you see that. And one other thing, my daughter has a gentleman friend, and he's able to see what you see, Mr. Allen, what you see with your Nikon D4 camera, he can see with a naked eye, night and day. He has this gift. He's also an abductee also. And he's telling me all these things he can see, these little orbs and everything, and he tells me what color they are and how they transmit between them with lights like you're talking. And anyways, he also says that there's a big mothership out there just beyond the 22,000-mile mark that is absolutely gigantic, something like Independence Day mothership. And he says it's cloaked, and he says it sits, and he points in the sky to where it's at. And what I would estimate that it's probably over New Mexico or something, way up in the air. And it's quite a phenomenon that he can see, and he wants to remain anonymous because if he was ever found out by the military, they'd probably put the gloms on him, and so he doesn't want anybody to know other than the fact that he can see these with the naked eye. Quite a gift, I would say.
Wow.
And another thing, I had an astronaut friend that told me a little secret one time, and he said that Apollo 8, when it came out from behind the moon, they had a code word, And when they were able to reestablish radio contact, it was at Christmas time. And you probably still remember this, everybody that remembered it. They came out and they established radio contact.
Edgar says that while he's landing the lunar module during the Apollo 14, by the way.
Well, what it was it's just a simple couple of words. And he said, there is a Santa Claus. Remember that?
Looks like Christmas down here.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he said that was code word for there is a base on the
aliens. That's what they were looking at.
Yeah, that's what the code word was, that there is a base on the backside of the moon, and they transmitted that with there is a Santa Claus, and so there's quite a base on the backside of the moon. From what I understand, from what I'm able to gather, it's manned by an outfit by the name of Ashcroft Command, and they're the ones that have these great big huge spaceships like the one that tried to, I don't know, it was fooling around with that JAL freighter up in Alaska one time, and it was just absolutely huge. If it was sitting on the ground, the top of it would be at 5,000 feet. That's how huge it is. He said that this person was saying that this spaceship could probably hold 1,000 747s. That's how big it is.
Well, this is beginning to sound like Mr. Lear might have been correct when he's talking about 2 billion people on the backside of the moon. I think he thought I was making fun of him. We really did go from March 31st that night until over to the 1st of April. I said I have one last announcement to make. It's April Fool's Day, but I didn't. I wasn't disrespecting John Lear at all. Some of the stuff that came out of his mouth that night was just extraordinary. So I hope John's listening, and don't take any offense of that, man. If I'm not a little bit of a smart aleck, it comes out just really kind of boring sometimes. All right, let's take our little break here. Thanks very much for that call. Wilbur, this is extraordinary photography. I urge everyone to take a look at UFODC.com because this is going to knock your socks off, and maybe some other articles of clothing as well. This is Coast to Coast AM. Wilbur Allen, are you on the lecture circuit when you're not taking these fabulous photographs? What do you do?
I do the lecture circuit periodically. In fact, I'm lecturing in Edinburgh, Scotland, in about 6 months after I do examination of Loch Ness while we're in Scotland. But I do other things. I have other contracts, and I'm primarily an entertainment photographer. And my company essentially right now is generating color technology for 3D motion picture special effects and 3D game development called UFO colors. You can Google UFO colors and see the colors that I've been able to generate from my UFOs. But other than that, I'm a contract photographer at Nat Geo, and I shoot photographs for a living.
Fantastic. Listen, anybody who a lot of people are hitting your website. I hope you got a nice solid server there. It'll come back up here shortly.
I do. I can handle it.
I know it. I'm just throwing that out there. Listen, anybody who thinks this is a put on, it's not. This stuff is undeniable. You have to go to UFODC if you want to see this stuff. If you want to see what's been captured by Wilbur Allen with his cameras, do go to UFODC.com because this is just extraordinary. What do you make of these? I mean, is that a linear formation of little cylinder craft that looks like stitching? It looks like, I mean, this is unbelievable to me.
What it actually is a composite of multiple frames, and what I generally do is if I have an event and it's captured on video, is I take the actual event itself and I look at it incrementally, and looking at it incrementally means I'm looking at it frame by frame. So what I do is I take those frame-by-frame attributes, and I take each element of the object in each frame, and I composite it into a singular frame to show the overall attributes of the object as it either materializes or dematerializes or flies through the frame. By the way, for some of those people who are interested in looking at this information, I would suggest they go to Robert Stanley's website at unicusmagazine.com and look at the data which he's accumulated based on the material that I submitted to him and other research that he's able to gather from doing searches of events that take place.